All right, welcome to Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, to Virtual Arts Advocacy Day. My name is Julie Baker. We're just gonna give it a couple minutes as people are logging in to our session on Get to Know Your Statewide Advocacy Organizations. We're really excited that you're here. Some of you may have been on the last call, which was, or webinar, or whatever we call these things today. And it was great. I just ended with some chair dancing, which I was really excited about as a way to start my day. We'll probably end the whole day with some chair dancing as well when we get into happy hour between 5 and 6. So hope that you'll come back and join us at the end of the day. Every session you can log in at any time during the day. So we hope that if you haven't logged into other things or signed up or registered, that you will continue to do that. We'd love to see you at all of the sessions today, but I understand that people have other things going on in their lives and they need to, maybe it's homeschooling, maybe it's making some lunch, but we're actually going to do a virtual lunch gathering as well, where that's a meeting where we will see each other. So we're getting there. We've got over 100 people on the call already, so thank you to everyone who's joining in. And I think we're gonna get started then so we can keep ourselves on time. And I want to let's see, Jade Alyssa, who's there behind the scenes in that box that says Californians for the Arts. She's gonna start soon with my slides so we can get started. We can just have those up there, and there it is. Awesome. Okay, so my name is Julie Baker. I'm the Executive Director of Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. We welcome you to Virtual Arts Advocacy Day and Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month in the state of California, where we celebrate and recognize the impact of the arts, culture, and creativity, and the creative economy. Today, we're really excited to have with us leaders from statewide advocacy organizations. And with us today is Sarah Weber from Association of California Symphony Orchestras, Celeste DeWald from California Association of Museums, Pat Wayne from Create California, and Tom DeCaney from California Alliance for Arts Education, as well as our lobbyist, Jason Schmelzer from let's say Shaw, Yoder, Antwi, Schmelzer, and Lang. I got it. So I want to just start off with a little bit about us, also some housekeeping just quickly. We will have some time at the end for Q&A, so there is a section there where you can add your questions, and there's also a chat feature. If you want to just say who's here and start chatting, you're welcome to do that. We'd love to see who's up in our webinar today, so please feel free to start chatting. So just quickly, California Arts Advocates is actually a 501c4, which under IRS code allows us to have a fabulous lobbyist like Jason. We were founded in 1996, and then Californians for the Arts is the C3, the more typical nonprofit organization. We were established in 2007. We are the only comprehensive multidisciplinary organization focused on advancing and building public awareness of the value and impact of arts, culture, and creativity across California. We have over 15,000 active subscribers, hundreds of members representing thousands of artists and arts and cultural organizations. We take on opportunities and challenges that no single organization or artist can represent alone. Our mission is to ensure that the arts are accessible to all Californians, are an ongoing part of the public dialogue, and to encourage Californians to care about the arts as a critical component of their own lives and the lives of their communities. We fight for arts resources and policies that benefit our members and all residents of California. And we're so pleased today that we've got our colleagues here from across the state to join us in telling their stories about what they work on. So if we can go to the next slide. Jade Alyssa behind the scenes, if you can get to my next slide. So as we all know, of course, we are in the midst of something incredibly unprecedented in terms of what this has done to our lives and sheltering at home, what it has done to our arts organizations in terms of us being some of the first to close and maybe the last to actually reopen in full capacity. And so we have had to all shift in terms of our advocacy priorities. And I just wanted to give you an overview, sort of two slides quickly on what we're doing in terms of our priorities. So in sort of on the federal level as well as state level, we make sure that all nonprofit organizations, including the arts, are included in all government stimulus, emergency grant and loan programs, and economic recovery efforts and initiatives in order to sustain and reignite the creative and economic engines of the arts. That there be consideration of increasing and expanding unemployment insurance benefits, including self-employed and gig workers, which include many individual artists and performance event workers. Now that 36% of Americans participate in the gig economy in some way, we must make sure our employment security systems are built for today's workforce. So you'll see Julie Su, the Director of the Department of Labor here in California, just announced what's happening with pandemic unemployment assistance, which is through the CARES Act, and that is available to people who are self-employed, and that system should be up and running within the next 2 weeks. We also want to make sure that charitable giving is incentivized through tax policy whenever possible. All right, next slide. And then specifically for the things that we're working on here in the state of California, we were really in a place where the budget for the state arts agency, the California Arts Council, which is one of our primary missions is to increase that, was on a roll really to increase this year. We were seeing Governor Newsom had included $10 million in one-time funds in the beginning of the year in his January budget announcement. And then we had also seen in February an additional $20 million from Assemblywoman Gonzalez for AB 5 compliance for small budget arts organizations. We are now, and our lobbyist, Jason Schmelzer, will speak to this more, but we are really anticipating that nothing in terms of increases will be seen for most state arts agencies or state agencies. And so really our pivot now is to make sure that the budget for the state arts agency, the California Arts Council, remains at current levels, which currently is $26 million. And if cuts are made across all state agencies, the arts are not cut in any greater percentage than any other agencies. We're also looking at cities and counties prioritize arts funding to activate local economies post-crisis, looking at community development grants, for example, that public and private funders loosen their grant restrictions and work on rapid distribution of general operating funds into the field, and that artists and arts organizations are viewed as essential workers and valuable small businesses during the crisis and post-crisis for economic revitalization. So that's some of the main priority areas that we're focused on. If you attended our webinar on Monday about being an effective and informed arts advocate, we certainly went into much deeper dive on all of this, and that is available on our website. So I just wanted to give you a short introduction on who we are. I'd like to now go, and so we can get rid of the slides. We can now go to, here we go, Jason Schmelzer, and Jason is our fabulous lobbyist. We're really, really lucky to have him with us on our team. And part of why Jason's here, not only is to give us the lay of the land, but we also want to demystify who is a lobbyist. And because they are real people with art in their lives and children and all those other things. So quickly, Jason, let me just give you your bio, if I may, and then we'll get into your giving your presentation. So Jason Schmelzer is a legislative advocate with a firm since 2009 and a partner since 2016. He's a leading advocate in the areas of workers' compensation insurance, environmental regulation, solid waste management, and arts funding, among his many areas of interest and expertise. Prior to joining the firm, Jason served as a lobbyist for 4 years, most recently for the California Chamber of Commerce. His primary responsibilities at the California Chamber included directing legislative advocacy for their more than 15,000 member companies on issues such as transportation, air quality, chemicals policy, workers' compensation, and other lines of insurance. Previously, Jason was the legislative director for the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. He served as the association's voice in the legislature, governor's office, and administrative agencies on issues including labor law, workers' compensation insurance, and healthcare. Jason spent 5 years working in the insurance industry prior to beginning his career as an advocate. In this role, he attained valuable hands-on experience working with private and public sector entities attempting to navigate California workers' compensation system. Jason holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in government from California State University, Sacramento. He resides in Sac with his wife and 2 sons who are budding artists themselves. And so, Jason, tell us why you care about the arts, and also give us a sense of what is happening or not happening currently in Sacramento in terms of the budget and legislation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, lobbyists are real people. Remember that. We're not all wearing overcoats and top hats and act like people in the movie Thank You for Smoking. So, no, we're real people. I'm stuck in my house like everybody else. As Julie indicated, I'm a partner at a lobbying firm here in Sacramento. We represent folks all across the board. I happen to be a huge advocate for the arts for a couple of different reasons. One, I always, refer to myself growing up as a poor kid. I didn't have a lot of access to stuff, and I felt very limited in my life early on. Luckily, because of clients like California Arts Advocates and others, I've had the opportunity to expand my horizons a little bit, but that takes resources, and I'm a big fan of helping get those resources out to the people who need them. Not every kid has the ability to have a piano in their home and somebody teaching them. So that matters to me a lot just because of where I came from. And then secondarily, I'm a huge consumer of the arts. I love beautiful things and wonderful experiences. And I think, my life is immeasurably better because of all of the things that I've been exposed to. I'm a big fan of going to concerts with my kids. And doing lots of museums and community arts events. So it matters to me. It matters to the fabric of my community. So it's vitally important. And I always joke, nobody's ever mad at me most of the time for advocating for the arts. It's one of those things that I can do and everybody's happy about it. So that's nice. In Sacramento, as Julie indicated, COVID-19, Sacramento isn't spared in a sense from kind of the halt that has gone on across, I think, our society. So legislative business has slowed substantially. The legislature has been on recess since the middle of March. They initially had an April date to come back. That has been pushed to early May 4th. I think there's an open question about whether or not the legislature actually does come back on May 4th. In large part, it will depend on the extent to which the curve has been bent and people feel like they can safely return. I think there's kind of dual interests here. If you're just thinking of like the human element from the perspective of the legislature, one, they want to set a good example, right? They want to show everybody what it means to shelter in place and do the right thing and socially distance. And so maybe don't come and conduct legislative business. But I think there's also a feeling that they need to be at work showing Californians that they're in control and doing all the things that need to be done, moving the levers of government to make them work. So I think there's some competing priorities. And like everybody else, I think the legislature is doing their best to figure out what makes the most sense and how to conduct business. It's just changing week to week. Julie and I frequently talk about, well, who knows where we're going to be next week? Let's worry literally about the next 4 or 5 days. So that's kind of the sense in Sacramento right now. We're really taking it a week at a time. One thing that is definitely bad is the budget. California is going to take a big budget hit. The tax revenues are going to be down because of, one, the stock market. California relies a lot on stock market revenue to fund its operations. And two, just unemployment is going to be extraordinarily high. So people don't have jobs and don't pay taxes and they don't go out and they buy things. Cities are going to be impacted because of sales tax revenues. So the tax revenue hit around the state is going to be pretty substantial. There have been several signals from the budget committee as well as the administration that legislators and the administration alike need to really pull back their expectations. Advocates like us need to pull back their expectations. This was going to be a year of budget expansion, and now that is not going to be the case. I think what you're going to see are two budgets. One in June. The legislature is required by June 15th to pass a budget. But since they moved the April filing deadline for taxes to July, they're not going to know what the revenue scenario looks like until August. So they'll meet their constitutionally mandated requirement to get a budget done in June. And then they'll come back in August once they've figured out the tax receipts. And then that's where the action will be. My guess is the budget will be all important in August, and some tough decisions are going to be made. With respect to legislation, I think that's a little bit more nebulous. Obviously legislators think that everything that they introduce is important and they want to proceed for some reason. There have been some really strong signs from the legislative leadership and just some members of the legislature and the press, saying that legislators really need to scale back their efforts. If it's not focused on COVID-19, wildfires, or homelessness, kind of California's trifecta of emergencies right now, there's not going to be a lot of patience among committee chairs, legislative leadership, and maybe the governor to deal with those types of issues. So a lot's up in the air. One other thing I would say is right now, I think tone is very important, no matter what you're advocating for or what angle you're coming from. I can tell you I've had a lot of conversations with legislators, staffers, folks in the administration over the past several weeks, and there's one consistent message that I'm getting, and that is that people, us, advocates, lobbyists, et cetera, currently have no sense for their own tone-deaf behavior. There's a lot of people knocking on doors, demanding things that maybe just aren't timely. So I would say, try to focus on kind of where the arts intersects with everything that's really important to legislators that are out there right now and staffers in the administration. How can we be helpful? Let's be cognizant of where we are. I think Julie hit a major point earlier that we're pivoting in this budget situation from a growth mode to a protection mode. And there will be more to come on that. But protect your space, but understand kind of what's going on in the big picture.
Jason, thank you so much for that overview of what's happening here in Sacramento in terms of budget and legislation. It's really important for us all as arts advocates that we understand the landscape in which we're working. And it is really important that we are sensitive to what is happening right now, which is primarily to protect public health and safety. And where we can intersect as arts advocates and artists and arts organizations in terms of mental health, wellness, providing lessons for students, all of that is going to be important in terms of our messaging. It's also going to be important in terms of our messaging with economic revitalization. When we do get back to work, we know that the arts are going to help build our economy again. And so with that, I want to turn to, and we'll get a chance to have some questions hopefully at the end here. So do enter your questions in Q&A. If we don't get a chance to get to them, we assure you we'll hold those and we'll respond in email form as well. So thank you, Jason. We're going to switch now to Celeste DeWald. And Celeste is the Executive Director of California Association of Museums. They just had, right before the pandemic hit, you had your big conference. And I think there was something like 800 people. You had a record attendance.
Yes, we had 717 registrants, which was a record attendance.
It was great.
And we're very thankful that we got in at the 11th hour. There are about 20 other state museum associations across the nation that obviously had to cancel or postpone their conferences. So we're thankful that we got in just under the wire.
You did. Let me just quickly, if I can, read your bio so people know who you are, because you are an important leader here in our state and with arts advocacy. Celeste has over 25 years of experience working in the museum field while pursuing her bachelor's degree in art history at UC Santa Cruz, my alma mater as well. She was introduced to museum work when she assisted with the development of a mobile art museum that traveled to elementary schools. She became fascinated with the vibrant role museums can play in communities in learning about history, science, and the arts. She interned at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of African Art and the San Jose Museum of Art. Celeste's first paid job in the museum field was at the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History, where she had a good hand in both administration and education programs and assisted with a merger between two organizations. She worked as the Director of Education and Public Programs at a startup museum, the National Steinbeck Center, where she developed K-12 and public programs and cultivated partnerships with social service organizations in a predominantly Latino community. Celeste has a master's degree in museum studies from John F. Kennedy University. She became executive director of CAM, which is California Association of Museums, in May 2004, and has enjoyed being an advocate for museums and helping them become more relevant and effective organizations. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Coalition of State Museum Associations having previously represented the museum field on the board of director of California Nonprofits, the steering committee of the California Preservation Program, and the California Alliance for Arts Education Policy Council. So welcome, Celeste. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
You're welcome. So in all of us, for everyone here on the call, I basically sent a series of questions. And so I'm going to mention those right now, and then maybe you can respond to those. So basically we asked, of course, first of all, please tell us about your organization and your mission. What do you advocate in what we would call normal times, which would be pre-COVID-19? What are you advocating for currently? And in your opinion, what is the most effective narrative or method to see public funding and support for the arts and creative economy, and in particular museums in California, continue as we emerge from this crisis? Things like, if you had a crystal ball, which I think we're all hoping somebody does, what do you think will change for the arts and culture sector as we emerge post-crisis? And then finally, of course, we'll add into the chat box how people can get involved with your own with your organization. So Celeste, why don't you give us an overview, if you can, based on those questions?
I would be happy to. And first, I want to thank you, Julie and Californians for the Arts, for inviting me and the California Association of Museums to participate in this panel. I think you're also in new territory here with a virtual advocacy day, and I want to just give you kudos for being brave to do that and be a model for others that may want to do this in the future. So thank you for that. The California Association of Museums is a network of museums and museum professionals with the shared vision of stronger museums for a stronger California. That is our vision statement, and it represents our core belief that museums are civic and educational institutions that contribute to the well-being of the state. We have over 1,200 individual and institutional members that are located in 206 cities across the state. From Mount Shasta and Eureka in the north to San Diego and El Centro in the south. Our institutional members represent the breadth of the California museum field. About half are art museums, or a combination of art and history, what we would call multidisciplinary, and about 7% are cultural specific institutions like tribal museums. The rest of our membership are history museums, science museums, zoos and aquariums, and science centers, children's museums, botanical gardens. So our membership also represents all budget sizes, from very small, all volunteer run organizations to those that are, world renowned here in California. So the way that we like to think of it is we like to think that our institutional members are a really good cross section of the museum field. So you asked us to address, what do we advocate for in normal times? I mean, I always like to kind of joke that there really isn't a normal legislative session. It's like every legislative session, there's something new that we're dealing with that we've never dealt with before. But I think your question was more like, what did we advocate for? What did we do before pre-coronavirus times? And we really see ourselves as a voice for the California museum field. We were founded in 1979 under the belief that there were issues that the California museum field should be collectively advocating for, and we really continue to work under that premise. With the support of a professional lobbying firm, Fearless Advocacy, we monitor legislation, we take positions on bills, and we champion funding for arts and culture. So in the last legislative session, that meant that we advocated for funding for the California Arts Council. We also advocated for funding for the California Cultural and Historical Endowment. In the past, not this last session, but in the past, we've spearheaded legislation that would make museums more accessible to people with EBT cards. And we were also successful in establishing the Snoopy license plate program that established the museum grant program with the California Cultural and Historical Endowment. We also partner with the California Department of Education and the California Natural Resources Agency on 2 awards programs. The one with the California Department of Education focuses on recognizing excellence in K-12 museum education programs. And the awards program with the California Resources Agency, Natural Resources Agency, is focused on models for communicating about environmental sustainability. which is important to our natural history museums and other museums as well. For this legislative session, one of our key projects was California Museums Week, which was a new project that we were going to move forward on, and it was going to take place in mid-May. It's still going to take place, but we're reimagining it, and I'll get to that a little bit. It was originally thought to be that during California Museums Week, we were going to encourage legislators to organize group tours, whether those were students or seniors or whatever target audience they were interested in, to organize tours to museums. Now, obviously, that's why we have to reimagine it, because there probably are not going to be any group tours to museums in May. So we were also very strong proponents on a climate resilience bond, which would have included capital funding for museums to protect cultural and natural resources from climate impacts. That too now is likely on the back burner. Our plans for this session, now that we are in an age of quarantine and an age of where getting together and visiting public places is discouraged, necessarily so, obviously. We have had to, like everybody else who's probably going to be talking to, we've had to focus almost completely on COVID-19 related relief and recovery. Based on a survey of our institutional members that closed about 10 days ago, we calculate that California museums are losing $22 million a day during this crisis. And by May 1st, the California Museums field loss of revenue will be $930 million. So, you know, they're dire circumstances, just like a lot of other sectors and industries right now. So up to this point, we've been politely but strongly pestering our members to reach out to their members of Congress to include nonprofits and museums in the CARES Act, and now in the 4th federal relief package. Although we were very happy to see money allocated to NEA and NEH in the CARES Act, the funding that was allocated to the Institute of Museum and Library Services was earmarked for very specific causes. It was to help expand digital network access and provide technical support services on unemployment and other vital information. That's all really important, but for this reason, because it wasn't really focused specifically on museum-specific issues, we are working hard to get relief for museums in the 4th phase of economic relief in Congress. We've also been sharing the results of our survey with state agency partners and legislative leaders so they understand the dire circumstances that museums are facing. There's also kind of a out-of-the-box thinking that we're trying to do, just like everybody else, is that there's about $1 million that has accumulated in the Museum Grant Program Fund from sales of the Snoopy license plate project. So, you know, Snoopy license plate is a special interest license plate in the state of California, and the funds of that has been accumulating and was going to be distributed through a kind of a reimagining of the museum grant program. Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to persuade decision makers that these funds should be distributed swiftly and, you know, swiftly for COVID relief and recovery. So hopefully we'll make some progress in that. People seem to understand the need, which is great. And lastly, we also support Cal nonprofits and the broader nonprofit sector in calling for greater flexibility in government contracts and payment assurance and equitable access to relief efforts for nonprofits as are made for small businesses. So whatever opportunities there are for small businesses, we're also trying to make sure that nonprofits have that equal access to that as well. So you asked us to address, Julie, what's the most effective narrative or method? And I think I'm going to echo a little bit of what Jason has said. Is I think that we have to clearly communicate what our sector is experiencing, but we have to do it in a way that is not tone deaf. That seems to be a theme that's people are dying. Health workers are risking their lives, and the state is in disaster mode, and some communities are affected and suffering more than others. And we can't turn a blind eye to that. We've been sounding the alarm, but we're also focusing on how California museums have stepped up to serve their communities in new ways. They're providing a lot of digital resources to schools, to students, to teachers right now in ways that they haven't in lieu of physical field trips. And some museums have even taken it as far as donating their PPE supplies from the care of their collections to healthcare workers. So we're trying to make sure that museums are mindful of their role in serving their greater community and what they can do, and also highlighting that to our elected officials. So I don't have a crystal ball on what's going to happen, but I will say that there was an article that I read in Art News in early April by the director of the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C., which is one of my favorite museums. And the director was talking about how the Phillips Collection was founded about 100 years ago after two members of the Phillips family had died from the Spanish flu, and how the whole purpose of that collection and making it publicly accessible was to really kind of try to help infuse some beauty in people's lives and to really help them kind of experience the world through an artist's viewpoint. And I think for me particularly, that's my preferred future. My preferred future is that one in which arts and cultural organizations are catalysts for helping us recover and heal, both, mentally, physically, spiritually, that we have some sort of rebirth, that arts and culture are really involved in being a catalyst for that, and being really reassessed during these difficult times, that arts and culture make our lives better and help us heal. So how can people get involved? If you're in the museum field and you're interested in what I'm saying right now, and you're not our bi-weekly newsletter, that is a really easy thing for you to do, and you can sign up for our newsletter on our website. And that, I think that addressed all of your questions that you had asked us, Julie. So
beautifully said. Thank you so much, Celeste. And we're just also lucky to have these experienced and passionate leaders for our statewide advocacy organizations. And we've put in the chat box, calmuseums.org is your website. And of course, everything is also on our own website, their bios and how to get in touch with them. And so, and I see in your photo here, you got Ian Calderon, Assemblymember Calderon is the majority leader of the Assembly. You will actually be on our call at 2 o'clock. So hopefully you'll stay tuned. And I want to get us to our next presenter. So thanks, Celeste. So let's bring up Sarah Weber. Sarah is the Executive Director of the Association of California Symphony Orchestras, which is the acronym is ACSO, A-C-S-O, and since January 1st, 2019, and has been with the association since 2016. Sarah's worked in the arts and culture sector for more than 15 years and is focused on building organizational health in order to best execute mission-driven initiatives and serve diverse communities and audiences. With a background in museum education and operations, Sarah was previously hired by 2 major museums as part of new leadership teams at both the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, that's a really cool museum, and the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. She created fully functioning education departments from the ground up. She also led the education department at the Los Angeles Conservancy, historic preservation nonprofit, and has consulted for other nonprofits in the areas of fundraising, membership, and operations, including the Pasadena Symphony, the San Bernardino Museum Association Festival Mosaic, and the Santa Monica Conservancy. Originally from Salt Lake City, Sarah holds a BA in history from the University of Utah and an MA in history and museum studies from Arizona State University. She completed a 9-month leadership fellowship in 2018 through the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce. Sarah is a violinist. Oh, you're going to have to join us later on the virtual jam, and has enjoyed playing in youth and community orchestras throughout her life. So please welcome Sarah Weber from ACSO. So Sarah, you got all those questions. I'm just going to hand it off to you to address them. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone. I want to echo what Celeste said and just thank Julie and everybody at Californians for the Arts for carrying on with Arts Advocacy Day, which is so important. I'm glad it didn't go dark this year. I'm really glad we're all here. So like Julie said, I'm Sarah Weber with the Association of California Symphony Orchestras. We represent orchestras and classical music ensembles and individuals who work with or at orchestras. We have about 130 orchestras throughout the state and some in adjacent states that are members of organizational members of ours, and they represent between 2,500 and 3,000 staff and board members. And we really focus on supporting the administrative roles in orchestras, really operations of orchestras. We are one of very few state orchestra associations. Most states do not have one. We're the largest, and it has something to do with the fact that California has more orchestras than any other state, certainly because we're a big state, but also this is an arts-rich state. It produces a lot of musicians, and we, you know, it's really interesting that there's almost every small town, small community has an orchestra. So just tells you how many musicians live in and work in California that tiny towns can have orchestras. It's really phenomenal. I just want to shout out to any of our members who happen to be here today. We hope you're here, and hello to all our orchestra members. And like Celeste and the California Association of Museums, we have a very diverse membership group. You know, the LA Phil is our member. They're the biggest orchestra in the country, all the way down to very small community orchestras like the Auburn Symphony. We represent music festivals. We represent chamber orchestras. We represent youth orchestras. There are a phenomenal amount of youth orchestras in California producing more musicians to feed into our orchestras, which is really wonderful. And we have some choral groups in our membership as well. And our vision, I think, which is almost more important than our mission right now for everyone, is that the classical music landscape of California is vibrant, diverse, healthy, and connected to the communities it serves. And that is really what we're focusing on right now, is this vision during these difficult times. During normal times, which by the way, I've been the ED for a little over a year now, and nothing's felt normal about the past year at all. So I don't really know what normal times are, but I think sort of when we're not in crisis mode, AXO is really involved in, one of the reasons we were founded in 1969 was to advocate for public funding for the arts, specifically through the California Arts Council. But that is what we are involved in, you know, all the time, is supporting increased funding, and right now sustained funding on a statewide level. We're also involved in working with our members to increase awareness of elected officials about the roles that orchestras and classical music ensembles play in communities and their communities, and how they enhance quality of life, how they provide music education for young people, and how they convene diverse groups of people. So we're really involved in advocating for the message that classical music is an essential part of a community's life all the time. And we also really work hard to keep an eye on policy that's coming from the state level, to changes to employment laws, changes to tax laws, anything that might have an impact on our members. And AB 5 is an example from the past year of what we've been watching and working on to identify how it's impacting our members, and to provide that feedback to elected officials and other stakeholders. So what are we advocating for now? So certainly we are involved in the collective voice to sustain the California Arts Council's budget right now. That's very important. We are lending our voice and support and efforts to that initiative. We've also been involved in working with some of our national partners, Americans for the Arts, the League of American Orchestras, in advocating for inclusion of the arts in the CARES Act and federal funding, and providing funding directly to the NEA. You know, the NEA did receive funding, not at the levels that were originally advocated for, but it has received funding. But we want the arts to be part of any ongoing and future relief funding. And we're also advocating for that for nonprofits as well. Just as Celeste said, that nonprofits should be considered small businesses. They should be included in any relief funding. They are economic drivers. And so we have been involved in that and messaging our members to be involved, to write letters to their elected officials, both locally and nationally, to get the word out about current and any future relief funding. We're spending quite a bit of time on that. We're still tracking and identifying the impact of AB 5 on our members. I know that things have sort of quieted on that front for a bit, but we know that there are clarifications in the works on AB 5, and we also are watching for that, and our members are interested. And actually, AB 5 has kind of resurfaced in conversations with our members about how that issues of employment classification could dovetail with the CARES Act, you know, federal policies based on classification and unemployment for independent contractors. And so there's some dovetailing that we're monitoring and talking about with our members. So those are occupying our time right now, those issues. And I think when talking about how to effectively communicate support for the arts and creative economy during and after COVID-19, I think you know, Celeste had said clear communication about the value of what we do, and I think trying to reframe the arts in a very appropriate way as not being sort of luxuries to return to when the dust has settled, but as part of the process of navigating this crisis and healing from the healing process during this crisis. The arts are critical players in that. And you can see that all around. I'm sure all of you have been consuming while you're at home, all the live streaming, all the digital content that is being produced by artists and arts organizations right now. On Easter Sunday, I watched Andrea Bocelli's live stream from the Milan Cathedral. You know, artists are working overtime to be part of the solution and to take care of us and each other during this time. And so I think communicating that appropriately, that we are part of national healing, and that we are also revenue generators and employers. So when you're talking about unemployment and economic impact, the arts are huge employers, particularly in California. So we want arts organizations to remain healthy so people can keep their jobs. I think that's another kind of important narrative. But then also the arts are nimble, and Celeste was talking about this, that we're service oriented. We're diving in and contributing, not only in providing virtual content and sort of keeping orchestras all over the state of California have continued to keep the music going by doing all kinds of digital content. We know our youth orchestras are continuing to provide lessons to their students virtually. The coaches are still teaching, and even more they sort of more urgently want to continue to do that because kids really need a relief and fun and something to look forward to right now while they can't go out. And so there's, you know, I was just on the phone with an opera company this morning, and their costume designers are now making masks. They've kind of repurposed them. So the arts are part of the problem solving. They're jumping in just like everybody else to provide essential services. So I think positioning and sharing those narratives are really important. And so I don't have a crystal ball either, but believe me, I've been talking for, the last month with my members about what we think things are going to look like on the other side of this. And I think things are going to be different. I think the way we produce and present live performance is going to be different. The way we manage our venues is going to be different. I think virtual content might become almost as important as live programming. I think we need to be savvier and better prepared for emergencies. I think we're all gonna get better acquainted with contracting and cancellation language in our contracts. I think we're gonna get more comfortable with technology. And I think maybe our relationships with our stakeholders might change a little bit. We've seen a great deal of nimbleness and support from funders and supporting us during this time. And I think those conversations might continue on maybe changing the way we operate. And so finally, my pitch of how you can get involved in AXO. I'm sorry, I'm rushing. I just know we have other presenters. Go to our website, www.acso.org. You can follow our social. You can become a member if you're an individual or if you're a classical music ensemble, you can join. Or you can just email me anytime, sweber, SWEBER, @axo.org. It's also on our website. I would love to hear from anybody about anything. We're all working together right now. So
thank you.
That's what I'll say. Thank you
so much. We're just, again, so lucky to have these amazing leaders here in California, a state of almost 40 million people. And we have all these fantastic organizations. And I want to get quickly to Tom DeCaney, who is the new executive director for California Alliance for Arts Education. He was appointed, hi, Tom. He was appointed in January. And he was most recently, many of you know of Tom, as the director of cultural affairs at the San Francisco Arts Commission. He was there for 8 years. And then prior to that, he was at the San Francisco Arts Commission, and he had spent 9 years as executive director of the Performing. Prior to the tenure Arts Commission, he was at the executive director of Performing Arts Workshop, a Bay Area nonprofit. He sits on a lot of fantastic boards: U.S. Urban Arts Federation, World Cities Cultural Forum, as well as the California Alliance for Arts Education. Well, he's now the executive director of that, and Lyric, and a number of other places as well. And I just want to give it to you to get going here to tell us all about what you're doing at California Alliance for Arts Education. So take it away.
Well, thanks, Julie. And first of all, I'm going to apologize. I'm having some internet issues. So Julie, let me know if I'm fading out and I'll go to audio only. But it's here today. Thank you so much all for joining us. It's such a crazy time. And I am so pleased to be among arts colleagues. So just appreciative to be here. For those of you that don't know, the California Alliance for Arts Education advocates for high quality arts education for all students in California by providing policy and by mobilizing a statewide network of advocates and allied partners. I'll tell you a little bit about what that would look like in normal times. I don't know if we know what normal is going to be like soon, but so for years, the Alliance has now decade, and we work with a number of allied partners, great partners like on the presentation call, our statewide teacher associations from the different of them are joining us here today. And all of these other partners state partner with us through our policy council. So it's a forum many of you on this call of Create and Californians for the Arts and many others. And the idea is,
you know what, Tom, we are having a hard time with your internet connection there in San Francisco. Maybe you want to switch just to audio so we can make sure. We'd love seeing your handsome visage, but we want to make sure that we hear you. So try again.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Murphy's Law. So some of our policy wins, thanks to all this great partnership across the state. In the past several years, we finally got a theater and dance credential passed the TDA Act. And since then, we've been working to make sure that that credential implemented properly through the post-secondary training systems, and one of our teacher association partners for that win. We helped advocate and win the Support in Academic Achievement grant program through the California Department of Education. Those were block grants distributed across the state, also known as the SSAE. We helped showcase some of the great successes across the state the country and using Title I funding, which is a federal funding source through the U.S. Department of Education, and how those funds could go to supporting arts education in public schools. And that's been actually a really big policy growth area for us, as implementing Title I funding for arts education. And I actually think that's going to be one of the things we're going to have to focus on as we put in our mode here in the future and try to protect the wins we've had. I think we're going to want to protect Title I allocations to funding arts education programs. And we have a campaign called the Arts Now campaign, and Arts Now our Arts Now communities, where we're working on the ground in local school districts, with advocates, many like yourselves, who are fighting for a high quality arts for all students. And we train those advocates as well as those districts through a planning initiative. We've worked with great folks like Bert and Robin Hampton to implement that Arts Now program. And that's going to be our future, I think, as we look to fighting the budget cuts that are inevitably away. And we were about to launch a new policy on the impact of the arts on early childhood education. Relevant, but looking a little bit differently now. And I think to Jason's very wise advice here, we're wanting to look for the right timing to that. So we are kind of holding off on the early ed policy paper, and we'll be trying to see when in the future we might be able to read that. We've also been looking at the impact of arts education within special education. A lot of great research that's been showcased through the Arts Education Partnership and funded through the Department of Education through their Arts and Education Model Development and Grant Program. And we've really been trying to highlight the ways in which the arts have an impact, helping ensure every young person in California gets a quality education. Now is an interesting time. And I think to Jason's point, we're kind of feeling that this is a staging moment where we are gathering, if you will. I know I've been in conversation with many of you on this call, and I think what we need to do is be ready for the fight ahead. It's going to be a long recovery. I think if I had a crystal ball, I would say we are going to be a
Tom, can you repeat your crystal ball, because we lost you for a second?
Oh, sorry. I said if I had a crystal ball, I would say we're probably headed for the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And I think we prepared for a minimum of a 3-year economic downturn, but possibly as long as 7 years. So the California Alliance for Arts Education, I think our is being ready for the long haul. So making sure we're organized, that acts are trained, getting trained, and that we're ready for a sustained fight. I don't think this is going to be a quick defensive posture. I think we need to rethink our advocacy strategy on the ground and at the state level, and prepared for what will likely be a 3 to 7 year economic downturn with significant cuts coming to public education. I think in terms of the main, I really wanted to echo what Jason said. There's a policy philosophy. Sorry, I'm breaking up. Can you hear me, Julie? Can you give me a thumbs up?
Yes, you're good. You're good.
Great. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. I really want to echo Jason's point, but I was going to say that in public policy, there is a strategy, Goldman School of Public Policy in Berkeley, called the Do Nothing strategy. And I actually now is a time for the arts to really step back and make sure that government can to the public health crisis in the forefront of everybody's minds. I just ever compete with lives. Obviously, there's great economic and unemployment, and many artists and arts educators are tied to economic woes. And I think our best case for now is to make sure there's parity in the distribution of any response to arts organizations as small businesses and artists as independent contractors and employees who are unemployed. I think partnering with our labor partners in the state of California, making sure that the arts are represented as a peer to other sectors, hospitality, all the economic impact to gig workers, hospitality. Those are drivers in the arts that have long been our allies, and I think understand the value. And I think our role is to make sure that the arts and arts educators are represented as those resources are put out through the various programs. whether that's the SBA Paycheck Protection Program, other larger stimulus response measures. So I think making sure that we're looking at ourselves as peers and not unique in terms of the economic impact that we're facing. That said, I think we also need to plan in the future ways of working and new ways of partnership. I would anticipate we'll probably see in the nonprofit arts and culture sector of at least 30 to 45% of funding. And so I think needing to rethink our way of working in our partnership structures. So be more efficient on the back end. And there's so many exciting innovations going on. Seeing what's happening in distance learning, watching hospitality, this sector shift, watching artists put on content online. Pat's going to share a lot about what Create's doing with the Create at Home initiative, but the arts are the first to innovate and the first to respond. And that's true in arts education and in actual performing arts and visual arts. So I think this is the right group of people to be innovating and looking at how we're going to be ready for the long haul. And we need to make sure that we strike the right tone, at least for the next 6 weeks while we're dealing with the public health crisis at such a difficult level. So I won't leave time for other folks.
Yeah, Tom, you're such a great thinker, and so we're so excited to have you as the leader for California Alliance for Arts Education, and we know all the fabulous work you've done for the state already, and so we're just grateful that you're in that position. We were excited to work with you, and some really, really good words of wisdom there. And I'm going to go quickly now to Pat Wayne, and Pat, we're going to just go over, so don't worry about it. We still have a lot of people here on the call, so Pat, please join us here, and we're just going to go over past noon. I don't have anything till 12:30 when I'm just going to hang out with other folks on the call. So Pat Wayne is the program director of Create California, and which is the statewide arts education coalition since 2015. And I'm just going to let Pat go ahead and make her presentation, and because I think a lot of who you are, of course, is in the presentation, and they do such a wonderful job. Very, very innovative organization. So Pat Wayne.
Thanks, Julie. And I'll just say shout out to you for pulling this off today. I don't know why we didn't think of this before, being the creative people we are, but there you go. Thank you for being the instigator of this. And so I just want to start out by saying, use your chat box. And if you have never heard of Create California or know very little, put the number 1 in your chat. If you kind of know us, but haven't really been a part of the initiative, use a 2. And if you're really familiar with us and wish I'd stop bugging you, just put a 3 if you know us well. So I just want to kind of get an idea of, okay, great, that helps me. All right, so here's very quickly, I'll talk about who we are. We are laser focused on disrupting the roadblocks that are holding the problem of inequitable arts education for every student in K-12 in place. So we want to disrupt those roadblocks. We're scrappy, we're flexible, we're a coalition of 5 state partners. And these are the partners that you can see, and obviously the California Alliance and Tom's whole team are one of the 5 key partners. And these partners banded together because they each had their own arts education initiative back in 2011 to really look at how can they work together to go further, faster, stronger, quicker to solve this issue of inequitable arts ed for every kid. And so this is just another way to look at it, where you can see the sectors that each of these 5 state partners across the top influence. And this really makes up our whole ecosystem. And then my job as the backbone is to knit them all together. We meet every single month. And we are constantly looking for what's the next new strategy that we need to address. So on our website, createca.net, which is the coalition website, you can find the blueprint for creative schools. And that has over 70 recommendations. We were just getting ready to revise this because it's 5 years old. And so stay tuned on that, because we will be moving that forward in a creative way, given that we can't convene people right now. But we will be, our goal is to have a new blueprint 2.0 that will take us through the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years by December. The next place we focused in during normal times was the Arts Ed Data Project. And if you're not familiar with the data, every fall, school districts submit their data to the state CalPAD system. We pull that data over so that we can make it user-friendly. And this is a great way, if you are in the arts education space, for you to shape your programs and have data to back it up about where you're going to be working, where teaching artists, arts organizations, as well as where advocacy needs to be happening. And what's very cool about this project is it started in New Jersey. California is part of the green states, which these are all the states that have launched their Arts Ed data. And the light kind of turquoise blue states are all going to be launching their data websites. So this is a national effort to really elevate the arts education inequity discussion. So we're really excited about that. This is kind of on auto right now. We just uploaded the latest data. So there's not anything to pause here, but just know that this exists. And when you go on the data website, there's a tutorial. So it kind of will help you navigate it. The centerpiece of what we're doing right now, which is so exciting, is our Public Will campaign. And this I'm really proud of, because funders have really aligned with the need for this, and how our messaging to bring more of the public under the arts education tent and the value of the arts, period, has been phenomenal. And our followers have exploded. We are gaining hundreds of people by the day, getting the attention of celebrities, which we've always struggled with. And the core messaging is creativity is not optional. And we went that direction because the word creativity creates a very big tent. Whereas with the words arts education, it suddenly became about, are you talented or not? So we spent many months testing messaging, and this is the unifying message. If you're puzzled by, well, what is a Public Will campaign? This is, at a glance, all the pieces that become activated in a really well-run campaign. And during normal times, we had just put the last pieces in place to be just activating on all jets. We're not derailing this, but we are pivoting it for right now, so that we'll be well positioned when we come out of this crisis. You can go to our sister website, which is createca.org. And we did that to kind of keep the campaigns separate for now, but you can get a partner toolkit. You can access swag, and you can download posters and cherry pick messaging that works for you and your organization and your situation. We have a whole team on this right now, and we're in the enviable position that have been able to keep them in place with the funding we have. And they are producing new graphics, new messaging in light of the situation we're in. So you want to join the movement at createca.org so you're receiving that and you can pull what works for you. So here's where we're pivoting, and I'm just going to talk about two things we're doing. I love this definition where the vision hasn't changed. We're just tweaking strategies to not be perceived as tone deaf. Of course, the first thing that happened is we had our state leadership conference scheduled in May in Sacramento with the Sacramento County Office of Ed and SESSA as our two partners. We've canceled it, and we don't know when it will get rescheduled because so many people are rescheduling for the fall. And we're trying to see, can we accomplish what we would normally do that in other ways? So one way it will be, we will pull that content forward is we're starting to put some webinars in place. The first one is going to be on April 29th at 10:30, and that is with Ping Ho, founder and director of Arts and Healing at UCLA. And what we are hoping to do there is equip you with the language of the role the arts have been playing in this crisis. We know that every list we see, 5 out of 10 things are, here's how you stay de-stressed, joyful, by engaging the creative parts of your brain as we navigate this landscape. And especially from the mental health perspective and social connection, as the other presenters have said so well. So we're really going to talk strategy and things as simple as your school boards are meeting through Zoom. Can a school board meeting open with a choir student singing a song of comfort to open that meeting up? Elevate our arts, and I'm calling that, just in for Pat Wayne, undercover advocacy, that we're continue to elevate our role and how we are a solution partner now and when we come out of this situation. So the second thing I just want to mention as part of our pivot is we've launched Create at Home. And we decided to focus on what we were hearing from parents was being overwhelmed by lesson plans and the teacher packets. And so we went to the field to say, what do you have that's plug and play, that a parent can tap into and not have to be the teacher in the situation, but rely on the teaching artists, the workshop, the live streaming, and things that the child can do, things that the whole family can do. Our key messages in this are, again, creativity is not optional, it's essential. We are an essential service in the mental health arena right now, and we want to make sure that we triple down on that, because the trillion-dollar question is, when we come out of this thing, what's going to happen to education budgets? And we cannot allow the arts to be the first thing on the chopping block disproportionately to everything else. As Tom said, we want to be seen as a good partner, a player in all of this, but we also want any cuts to be equitable. And creativity should be accessible, and creativity heals in times of crisis. So the way that you can access all those resources is at createca.org. There's a Create at Home tab on that sister website. Future. Here's what we're putting in the works. We are drafting right now, this week, a policy paper to our policy makers, our school board members, our governor, and we will hold that paper. And we're collaborating with quite a few key players in the space, including Tom and the Alliance, on getting the language right for a one-page letter that we want to collect 10,000 signatures. That's our goal, so that when we come out of this, if we need that letter to go to the governor, if we see things happening to arts education, that we're at the ready with signatures. The other thing we're doing is staying laser focused on the November elections. We were already partnering with the Entertainment Industry Foundation on billboards and bus shelter space that they have, as well as celebrity endorsements, so that we are ready in November to influence those school board elections and make sure that school board members value the arts for every student. This is a poster that we commissioned from artist Ernesto Llereno. And these are 3 students that we are now ambassadors for arts education, and they are my champions. And I don't underestimate the student role in all of this. I was talking to a council member, Meryl Goldberg at Cal State San Marcos, and her student ambassadors are, doing things like painting rocks and putting them by people's front door as a gift to them. They are holding a concert in the middle of their street for a single musician, solo musician, to add that element of healing and hope to their neighborhood street. So be thinking about, what can we do that's helpful and not tone deaf? And that's it.
You are awesome, Pat Wayne. Just such a stellar example of what really effective advocacy looks like. And we're just so lucky to have Create California and the coalition there leading the charge to make sure that arts ed is accessible to every child, every student in the state of California, and holding our lawmakers and policymakers accountable to make sure that that is enforced. And we join Create and California Alliance in that effort, and we've been working alongside as well. And we just look to them for so much leadership there. So thank you so much. That was just an exceptional presentation. And everybody here on the call, I think if you guys want to show your faces one last time, if you're still there, you please join us. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the call and for doing this. And I think that if I were to sort of say in conclusion, and I apologize, but we're just not going to get to the Q&A because we've got another session in 15 minutes where we're going to come on, and that's a meeting. So everybody gets to see each other. So if you want to see each other and say who's in the meeting, come to our meeting. We can eat lunch together and we'll just kind of chat for about an hour. And you can ask more questions there if you want. So everyone can join us that. But I just want to say, I think that the thread that I heard was that arts are essential, right? And that we need to be seen by our lawmakers and the people who hold the purse strings as essential. We know that ourselves. We know that in terms of what we provide, in particular right now in these unprecedented times. But we also know that we're going to be there when we need to revitalize our communities, and the arts are going to be a huge driver of that. So we encourage everybody to look at all the websites that are here for these fabulous arts advocacy leaders in the state of California, to join all of us in terms of following what we're doing and to raise your voice for the arts. You know, it's really easy to say it's important during urgent times. these are urgent times, but we also encourage you to become arts advocates during all times, because being consistent, showing up, and making our voices heard is how we will start to affect change. And so we thank you, and I thank you so much to everybody here on the call for your participation. And you guys just are stellar. I mean, it's just, we're so lucky to have such fabulous leaders in the state of California. Jason Schmelzer, thank you so much for being a real human who is also a lobbyist, who cares deeply about the arts. And I encourage you all to join us in 15 minutes on a meeting where we'll eat lunch and we'll snack and we'll talk. And then we'll have a 2 o'clock legislative session where we're going to have the Speaker of the Assembly, Anthony Rendon, the Majority Leader, Ian Calderon. We'll have Senator Ben Allen, who chairs the Joint Committee on the Arts, and Assembly Member Sydney Kamlager joining us at 2 o'clock. You'll hear from them why they believe arts are essential. You'll get a chance to ask those questions. We may not get to them again, but we are recording those questions, and we'll make sure that those get answered. And I know a lot of you also want to ask about Assembly Bill 5. I know that's an important, very critical issue to our sector, and we've been seeing some questions about that. And I just want you to know, stay tuned. We will be doing another session about that, not today, but sometime in the next couple of weeks. So keep in touch with us. So I think that's it for today. And thanks, everyone. Enjoy this beautiful sun. And thank you again for your advocacy. And don't forget, everyone, raise your voice for the arts. All right.
Thank you, Julie.